The Visit of the Man of God. In the 33rd year of Malyok of the Ming Dynasty, AD 1605, during the reign of King Sanjo in the 7th month, an unprecedented rainstorm occurred, the likes of which had never been seen since the dynasty's founding. Prior to this deluge, a woodcutter from KANG-WHA province was busy on a hillside chopping wood when an angel clad in golden armor descended from heaven on a white horse, wielding a spear. His presence was dazzling, and the woodcutter recognized him immediately as a man of God. Accompanying him was a Buddhist priest carrying a staff, whose appearance was equally remarkable. The man of God halted his horse and appeared to converse with the priest. Startled by the sight, the woodcutter hid among the trees. Seemingly enraged for some undisclosed reason, the man of God raised his spear and, gesturing towards the four winds, declared, "I shall flood the earth from here to there and destroy all its inhabitants." The priest pleaded fervently, beseeching him to relent, saying, "Such wrath will mean annihilation for mortals. Let your anger fall upon me instead." Moved by the priest's prayers, the man of God reconsidered, saying, "Then I shall confine it to specific places. Will that suffice?" Yet the priest continued to implore, until the man of God firmly replied, "For your sake, I have already reduced the punishment by more than half. I can do no more." Despite further prayers, the man of God remained resolute, prompting the priest to finally submit, saying, "Thy will be done." Having concluded their discussion, both departed, ascending through the upper air back to heaven. Although they had conversed at length, the woodcutter, being at a distance, did not hear all that was said clearly. Nonetheless, he hurried home with his family and escaped just in time, for soon after, torrential rain began. Mount Otai collapsed, the ground sank, creating a vast lake, and all its inhabitants perished, except for the woodcutter who had fled. In 1654, there lived a scholar in IMSIL who claimed mastery over spirits, boasting that 2 demon guards obeyed his every command. One day, while playing chess with a friend, they agreed that the loser would buy drinks. The friend lost, but refused to honor the bet. The scholar grew increasingly frustrated and warned, "If you don't pay up, I'll make things difficult for you." The friend remained obstinate, so the scholar, in a fit of anger, turned away and uttered a command into the air. Immediately, the friend tried to flee through the courtyard, but an invisible force seized him, delivering a series of powerful blows that left deep, bruised marks on his body. Overwhelmed by the pain, he finally relented. At this, the scholar laughed and released him. On another occasion, he was sitting with a friend when they heard drums and gongs from a nearby village where a witch's exorcism was underway. Suddenly, he rushed into a bamboo grove behind the official's residence, looking furious with glaring eyes. He shouted and bared his arm as if driving away unseen beings. After a while, he stopped. His friend, intrigued by this unusual behavior, asked what it was about. He replied, "A group of spirits from the exorcism have gathered in the bamboo grove. If I don't disperse them, trouble will follow in the town. That's why I shouted." Once, while traveling with another friend, he abruptly shouted into the air, "Let her go, I say. Release her, or I'll punish you severely." His friend, alarmed by his intense demeanor, asked what was happening. He remained silent for a while, and they continued their journey. That night, they arrived at a village where they wanted to stay, but the homeowner refused, claiming illness in the household. Despite the rejection, they persisted until a servant was sent to drive them away. Meanwhile, women inside the house watched through the cracks in the window, whispering anxiously. The scholar overheard their conversation. Shortly after, the homeowner returned humbly, begging them to come back and offering hospitality. He explained, "My daughter fell ill today and seemingly died. After some time, she revived and said a spirit took her soul down the main road. They were stopped by a man who drove away the spirit fiercely, allowing her to return to life. She saw you through the window crack, sir, and recognized you as that man. I don't know how to thank you. Are you a supernatural being or a Buddhist capable of such miracles? Please accept this small offering." The scholar laughed and dismissed it as nonsense, saying he couldn't perform such feats. He lived for several more years before passing away. The East believes in the existence of invisible elements that, when controlled, can manifest in various life forms. A man from KANG-WHA had mastered the art of summoning elements to create butterflies, a skill derived from Taoist magic known as Sun Sul. The story once, there was a soldier from KANG-WHA who was respected in his village despite being from a humble background and seemingly lacking any special talents. One midwinter day, his wife, overcome with jealousy, sat sewing in their home. Since he had to stay home that day, he tried to cheer her up by saying, "Would you like to see me create some butterflies?" His wife, even more upset, scolded him for his audacity and ignored him. Undeterred, the soldier took her work basket, picked out pieces of silk in different colors, held them in his hand, and recited a prayer. Then he threw the silk into the air. Instantly, beautiful butterflies filled the room, dazzling in the colors of the silk itself. The wife, amazed by this spectacle, forgot her anger. Later, the soldier opened his hand and all the butterflies flew back into it. He closed his hand again, and when he opened it once more, they were just pieces of silk. Only his wife witnessed this transformation. Others were unaware of this mysterious magic. In 1637, when KANG-WHA fell to the Manchus, the people fled in fear for their lives, but the soldier remained calm at home, having meals with his family as usual. He laughed at the neighbors rushing past, saying, "The invaders won't touch this town. Why are you running?" Indeed, while the entire island suffered devastation, the soldier's village was spared. Imbang. In 1396, Ha-yon graduated and became the magistrate of Anak County. He constructed numerous pavilions around his residence where people could relax. While touring his district and observing busy farmers, he composed many songs and verses to uplift them in their work. Later, he served as a royal censor, earning praise from King Taijong, who commended him as a diligent servant. Ha-yon eventually became chief justice, purging corrupt officials from public offices and ensuring the court's integrity. In his leisure time, he dressed in ceremonial attire, burned incense, sat attentively, and spent entire days composing prayer verses. During his youth, he impressed the court of the crown prince with his writing, which was described as beautiful writing, beautiful thought, truly a treasure. Ha-yon was renowned for his scholarly pursuits, humility, and friendly demeanor. He studied under the patriot Chengmongju as a young boy, always maintaining a virtuous and principled approach. His aspiration was to emulate the ancients, dedicating himself to truth and promoting the study of sacred texts. Rising early at the crack of dawn, he would wash, dress, and diligently engage with his books, surrounded by pictures on his right and books on his left, finding contentment in his scholarly pursuits. Eventually, he ascended to the position of prime minister. The old ancestral home of Prince Ha-yun was situated in Kumchan County. During times of peace and prosperity, he served as a renowned minister of state and often sought relaxation at his summer retreat in the same county. This mansion, spacious and well-maintained, remained in his family for many years following his passing. Local folklore recounts a peculiar tale of Ha-yun's prosperity. It said that in an upper room of his mansion, there was a large crock used for storing flour. One day, a servant, intending to access the flour, lifted the lid and was startled when a massive snake emerged from within. Frightened, the servant hurried to inform Ha-yun. He promptly dispatched his men to retrieve the jar. Upon breaking it open, they confronted a monstrous serpent unlike any seen before. Several servants joined forces using clubs to kill the creature. They then set fire to it, but the resulting fumes proved deadly. Everyone inside the house succumbed, leaving no survivors to carry on the family legacy. Those who later entered the house also met untimely ends, leading to the property being considered cursed and abandoned. Eventually, a mysterious fire destroyed the remaining structures, leaving only an empty plot of land. To this day, the location is known as haunted, and no one dares to rebuild upon it. By Imbang. During the Manchu War of 1636, as the people of Seoul fled in panic, one group unexpectedly encountered a formidable enemy force, fully armed and mounted, blocking every route of escape in the hills and valleys. They were paralyzed with fear and desperation. Amid this dire situation, they came across a stranger sitting calmly on the main road under a pine tree, seemingly unaffected. He had dismounted from his horse, which was held by a servant nearby, and a screen of cotton cloth shielded him from the passing army's dust. Approaching him, they pleaded, "We're all doomed. What should we do?" The mysterious stranger replied, Why fear death? Why be afraid? Sit with me and watch the enemy pass." Seeing his remarkable composure and having no alternative, they followed his advice and sat down with him. The enemy cavalry rode by in large numbers, mercilessly killing everyone in their path. Yet when they reached the spot where the stranger sat, they passed by without seeming to notice anything amiss. This continued until evening, by which time the entire enemy force had moved on. Throughout the day, the stranger and his companions remained unharmed, despite being in the heart of the enemy's camp. Realizing he possessed extraordinary powers, they all bowed before him, eager to know his name and where he came from. However, he remained silent, mounted his magnificent horse, and swiftly rode away, evading all attempts to catch him. The next day, they encountered a man who had been captured but managed to escape. They asked if he had witnessed anything unusual the previous day. He recounted, "As I followed the enemy army near that specific point," pointing to where the magician had sat with the people, "we passed by great walls and steep cliffs that blocked our path, which we had not seen before." Thus, the few yards of cotton cloth had seemingly transformed before the eyes of those who witnessed the events. Source: Imbang. The old man who became a fish. Some years ago, a prominent official took office as the magistrate of Kosong County. One day, a visitor came to pay respects, and at noon, the magistrate served him a meal that included skate soup. The guest, upon seeing the soup, contorted his face and declined, saying, "Today, I am fasting from meat and must respectfully decline." His face grew pale, tears streamed down his cheeks. Finding the behavior odd, the magistrate pressed for an explanation, and after much insistence, the guest revealed a remarkable and sorrowful tale. "My lord," he began, "in my life I have witnessed extraordinary and tragic events which I have kept secret until now. But since you inquire, I feel compelled to share. My father, nearly a century old, fell gravely ill with a fever that burned like fire. We feared for his life, gathered around him in tears, expecting his end. But he survived, and a few days later he made an unusual request. 'I am consumed by the heat of this sickness,' he said. 'Take me to the riverbank by our house where I can see the water flowing and find relief.' We hesitated, pleaded with him not to go, but he insisted vehemently, threatening dire consequences if we disobeyed. Reluctantly, we carried him to the riverbank. He gazed upon the water with joy, claiming its clear flow eased his suffering. Then he surprised us further, demanding solitude, urging us to retreat into the woods and wait for his summons. Despite our protests, he grew angry, leaving us no choice but to comply. We withdrew a short distance and watched from afar. Suddenly, he vanished from where he sat. Rushing back, we found his clothes abandoned, and in the water that had turned murky, we saw his transformation. His body had partly become that of a skate. Horrified, we dared not approach. Soon after, he changed into a large flatfish, swimming and frolicking in the water with apparent joy. He glanced back at us briefly before disappearing into the depths of the sea, never to be seen again. At the spot where he transformed, we found his fingernails and a tooth, which we buried. Since then, our family has abstained from skatefish. Whenever we encounter others consuming or cooking it, we are filled with revulsion and dread. Imbang. There once lived a geomancer named Yi Yui Sin, well-versed in the mystical art that blended Taoism and ancient Chinese philosophy. His expertise lay in finding auspicious sites influenced by the principles of yin and yang and the five elements: metal, water, fire, and earth. In Korea, immense sums were spent on geomancers like Yi, believed to secure fortunate homes for the living and favorable resting places for the deceased, reflecting a deep connection between earthly fortune and human destiny. One day, Yi embarked on a journey to locate a special mountain vein, starting from Dragon Ridge in North Hamgyong Province and following it until he reached Pine Mountain in Yangju County. There, he found the vein culminating in a perfect spot for burial, a beautifully rounded end. After a day spent wandering the hills, Yi grew hungry and spotted a small house nestled beneath a hill. He approached and politely asked for food. The owner, a mourner recently bereaved, respectfully offered him a dish of white gruel. As they ate, Yi inquired about the mourner's circumstances, learning that they were about to enter full mourning, but had not yet arranged the funeral. Feeling empathy, Yi asked if their delay was due to financial constraints or difficulty finding a suitable site. He offered his expertise, saying, "I am skilled in reading the hills. I can show you a site if you'd like to see it." Gratefully, the mourner accepted Yi's offer. Yi then revealed the auspicious end of the mountain vein he had discovered and advised on the precise placement of the grave according to compass points. "By possessing this site," he assured, "you will gain great prosperity. However, in 10 years' time, you will need to relocate. When that time comes, please remember me. You can find me under the name Yi So Pong, residing in West School Ward, Seoul." Filled with gratitude, the mourner thanked Yi and promised to seek him out when the time came for a new site. Thus, Yi Uisin's reputation as a geomancer continued to grow, offering both practical guidance and spiritual comfort to those in need. The mourner followed the geomancer's advice diligently, and true to the prediction, his fortunes flourished. He constructed a grand tiled residence and adorned the grave with substantial stones, reflecting the prosperity befitting a noble country gentleman. After a decade had passed, a visitor arrived one day and, greeting him respectfully, inquired, "Is that grave over yonder, beyond the stream, yours?" The master replied affirmatively. The guest then remarked, "That site is renowned, but it has been 10 years since you acquired it, and the luck has waned. Why not consider a change? Delay could lead to regret and potential disaster." Upon hearing this warning, the owner recalled the words of Yi the geomancer from years past. Recollecting this, he invited the stranger to stay as his guest while he traveled to Seoul the next day to seek out Yi in West School Ward. Finding Yi, he explained the situation. Yi calmly responded, "I was already aware of this." Together, they returned to the owner's home with the guest. They ascended the hill where Yi questioned the guest. "What prompted you to advise the master to relocate the site?" The guest answered, "This hill forms a kneeling pheasant configuration. If the pheasant kneels too long, it cannot endure, and within a limited time, it must fly. 10 years is the critical period, hence my suggestion." Yi chuckled and remarked, "Your perspective is only a partial view. You have considered only one aspect. There are other factors at play." He pointed to the peak behind them, identifying it as Dog Hill, then to the hill above, Falcon Hill, and finally to the stream ahead, known as Cat River. This entire configuration includes the dog behind, the falcon above, and the cat in front. How then can the pheasant fly? It dare not. Impressed, the guest acknowledged Yi's insight, saying, "Teacher, your vision is truly profound, surpassing that of ordinary men." From that day onward, the Yi family of Pine Hill rose to prominence, becoming renowned throughout the region. Anon.